All right, this is a demo of some other parameters that we can see in these water samples. And again, we've got distilled water, well water, and old hot tub water that's being changed out. And we're going to use a colorimetric measuring method this time. This is a test strip, and it contains little squares that are impregnated with different types of dyes. You're probably familiar with pH paper, and one of these is in fact very similar to pH paper that we have in our labs. But what we're measuring here is free chlorine, alkalinity, pH, and cyanuric acid. Now, we wouldn't expect to see free chlorine or cyanuric acid in distilled water, and let's take a look at what we get here. In fact, the upper measure actually I'm reading it backwards here. The lower measure here is free chlorine, and of course there's none of that. The pH, or rather the alkalinity, quite low. We would expect that with distilled water. It should be essentially zero. pH is in the sixes, and you might expect it to be neutral. It's typically not, even with distilled water, because of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We'll talk about that later. A certain amount of CO2 dissolves in water and acidifies it slightly. Cyanuric acid is essentially zero. Also, what you would expect with distilled water. Let's take a look at the well water. Also, let's hope there's no free chlorine in that, and there's not. The alkalinity is between 80 and 120 parts per million, and that's because it's not distilled water. It's got dissolved solids in it. We'll talk a little bit more about alkalinity. pH is in the sixes, and the cyanuric acid also zero, which you would also expect. Now we'll look at the hot tub water, and sure enough, there is free chlorine in that, which is within the normal range. It's been added to kill germs. Alkalinity is low, but in the range that's acceptable. pH also perhaps a little on the low side, and the cyanuric acid a little on the high side, and that's a good indication that the water it's time to change it. We'll talk more about these parameters. These are relevant, of course, to hot tubs, but also to other water samples, even fresh water and streams. Some of these parameters will show up. That's it for this demo.